I think that they have to be careful to take the direction from the cyber activists themselves, because I think, for example, in Egypt, there were some organizations that didn't want to take U.S. government money, and you can't force them to take that. And there were other groups that said, hey, we want to learn from revolutions that have happened around the world, in Serbia and in Poland, et cetera. So let us, we'll take funding to go there. We want to build our networks with transnational activists. So I think they have to take their direction from the activists on the ground.
Let's take a couple of questions. We'll take
this is somewhat connected to the last question, but more in the direction of individual activism and assistance from overseas. I know that there have been a number of different efforts during the 2009 post-Iranian elections. There were cyberactivists that were trying to crash Iranian government computer networks. There have been a bunch of other things. The cyberactivist group Anonymous has done some things. There have been proxy hostings and rehostings of websites by like Pirate Bay in Sweden. Are there any other particular examples that you can think of where people who are outside of essentially the Arab world are really reaching and actually having some sort of effect by participating? I know that clicking a like button on Facebook is almost literally the least you can do. What about going beyond that? Steps for cyberactivism beyond simply, putting your name on a Facebook page.
I think the crowdsourcing and the mapping exercises that are going on currently in Libya, Yemen, and elsewhere is one aspect of that. There's also, for example, the U.S. government helped entice Twitter not to perform scheduled maintenance that was supposed to happen right during the Iranian revolutions. Groups like Freedom House and others have been helpful in communicating with Facebook, with Google, about the need to understand the uses of these media for human rights, so that, if they're, for example, communicating, well, these are real pages, or these are activist pages, put them on your radar so that when the governments try to get them closed because of violation of terms of service, it's already on the radar of those companies that these are legitimate pages, that sort of thing. And then I think that, there's also the aggregation, the cultivation, the creating and getting news out. Making sure that, for example, when Tunisian activists couldn't access YouTube, that people that they can email those videos to people outside of that barrier, and then they can post it to YouTube. So I think there's a lot that people around the world can do, both organized and ad hoc. Certainly providing computers and proxies for the cloud that was created during Egypt, so that there could be connections. Providing international dial-up numbers that activists could use. There's an array of different options there. Yeah.
And a lot of it is happening, Courtney covered most of it, but a lot of this is happening sort of organically and horizontally between different Arab countries. So some of the activists in Egypt are supporting those in Libya, as was the case with the Egyptians who were supported by the Tunisians before them. So some of these capacities are being shared quite openly. And then of course you've got tools like Speak to Tweet, which emerged during the Egyptian revolution, which has become incredibly useful when you've got a complete shutdown of every other resource. If you dial a number, then you can tweet.
Speak to Tweet.
It's basically a sort of a
Twitter
tool.
voicemail.
Twitter voicemail. Yeah, essentially you call from a landline or any number to a number, usually international, and leave a voicemail, and the voicemail is then transcribed and posted on a Twitter feed. So,
thank you. Question over here.
My question to Adel. You talked about the Constitution amendment, and there was a feeling that there will be no...
Online
yes.
feeling, yes.
There will be a feeling that no is more than yes.
Yes.
And for sure the outcome was shocking, that 78, as you said, or 72, I think 78 or 77 came as yes. And I believe that the Muslim Brotherhood was having a great role behind this. So what you think if the Muslim Brotherhood played the same role in the coming elections for presidents and parliament, and they will win a president or a huge number in the parliament? And what you think, what Egypt is going to be? Is this Wa'il Ghunaim, what he was looking for, a democratic, secular, civil state, run by the Muslim Brotherhood, and we know all about their agenda.
In all fairness, we're talking about cyberactivism
Yes.
and not Adel's use of the
Okay, no,
future elections. But
no, I think it's
you wanna
interesting in
take
the
a shot at it?
I think it's interesting in the context of cyberactivism. I think it's it seems as though the referendum was a referendum on the popularity of the Muslim Brotherhood more so than anything else. So everybody walked away thinking the Muslim Brotherhood had a clean sweep as the only institution, only organization to support the referendum. But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. There is a tremendous amount of nuance in this situation, and it largely emerges from the fact that the average individual in Egypt who knows very little about the constitution, and there isn't really constitutional literacy, will look at the amendments and actually find them quite agreeable. Unless you're told that the amendments have sort of between the lines that there are problems with them, you would vote for them. And I've had to convince people, members of my own family who are secular, liberal, that. And of course, in the absence of the Muslim Brotherhood boogeyman in the context, many of them felt that to shorten the presidential terms to 2 terms and make them 4 years each, that was fairly agreeable. And then, given the fact that you had to vote for all amendments with a single yes/no. All of this was very, very convincing for the majority of the population. And in fact, it only, the no vote, those who were opposed to the amendments, actually had no more than 12 days to market their campaign. So there wasn't enough time. The Supreme Council for the Armed Forces rushed the process that I think if they were given more time, it would have resonated. They could have, put together campaigns that had crossed over from online to offline, but it didn't actually happen. So I think it's too early to judge this referendum as an indication that the Muslim Brotherhood are incredibly powerful and very salient, and that they will determine the outcome of the next 2 elections, whether parliamentary or presidential.
A final question. No, you can ask your question.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. I have a quick question about the space for U.S. policy to be effective in this region. Given past history, failed projects like Operation Haystack in Iran, and the fact that U.S. companies supply a lot of the monitoring tools that regions use to censor these activists, how willing are cyber activists in the region to work with the U.S. government to further the cause of freedom, transparency in the region? I think Ghanim tweeted right after Mubarak left that you haven't cared about us since. Why? Please don't start caring now. So if you could both comment on that.